So let me start, Honorable Minister. Thank you very much for gracing us with your presence. Minister of Defense of South Africa, Minister Mapisa Nqakula. My boss, Mrs. Graça Machel, Chair of the Board of Trustees of the Port, and representing the Mayor today, the Speaker of the Municipality, Honorable Bezize Thusi, representing the Premier of the Province, MEC Bongi Sithole Moloi, of course, our host for this conference, representing United Cities and Local Government, President Paul Stow, representing the United Nations Secretary General, the Under-Secretary General for UN 75, Mr. Fabrizio Oshal-Drummond, and we are very pleased that we have the Secretary General of United Cities and Local Government, who has put huge effort in making this a success. And of course, my good friend and comrade from this province, we are very pleased that you are here, Deputy Speaker Nechisa Senoli. Hopefully you won't have to say order in the House, because I don't think anybody is going to misbehave. Colleagues, mayors, excellencies, we have a very tight, short program. The program was inspired by a visit that we made as Global Peace to the city of Hiroshima, where we visited the Hiroshima Museum to see the devastation of the bomb, the atomic bomb that fell on Hiroshima. It was that inspired this campaign of planting trees, not bombs. And today we launched this campaign to plant 75 million trees across the world to commemorate the founding of the United Nations 75 years ago. And I will leave that to our speakers to say more about, but at this point I would like to call the Honorable Speaker of our municipality, Honorable Bezize Thusi, to welcome you.
Program Director, the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans, Ms. Nosiviwe Mapisa Nqakula, Global Peace Chairperson, Mrs. Graça Machel, Deputy Minister of Culture, Mr. Paul Stow, the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Nechisa Senoli, all protocol observed. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It gives me pleasure to welcome you all on this significant day, which marks the start of the Global Plant Trees Not Bombs campaign. As the city of Durban, we are honored to host this groundbreaking event, which will see our South African National Defence Force, led by the Minister Nqakula, planting 1 million trees by October 2020. We are pleased to learn that we have also challenged our counterparts across the globe to embark on a similar campaign, which will see over 75 million trees being planted to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. This initiative is critical as the world is beginning to witness the effects of climate change. I must indicate that this event is taking place at a time when residents of this province are experiencing adverse weather conditions, following a massive tornado that swept through the Midlands, injuring scores of people and leaving 2 people dead. Excuse me. Here in Durban, we have also experienced heavy rains and strong winds that damaged homes and public infrastructure. This is a clear indication that if we don't act now to save our environment, the consequences will be dire. The quality of our lives depends largely on the environment. As part of our contribution to deal with climate emergency, eThekwini Municipality has developed a climate action plan in line with the Paris Agreement on climate change. We are the first city in the continent to develop an action plan aimed at reducing carbon emissions. We want to commit ourselves to work with you, Minister, to take this initiative to our communities and plant trees in our open spaces. With these few remarks, let me welcome you all to the city of Durban and pledge our support for this campaign. I thank you.
It is now my pleasure to call upon the President of United Cities and Local Government to deliver a message from the conference organizers and from the mayors across the world. Mr. Parkstar.
Thank you very much to our program director. In the interest of sticking to the military precision, allow me not to acknowledge everybody in terms of their title, except to welcome the Minister who's joined us today, the Minister of Defense, Minister Nosibu Mapisa Nyakuda, our mother, Mom Gracia Michelle, dear colleagues and friends. Allow me to also send a special word of welcome to the mayors for peace, the mayor of Dionelis, the mayor of Ramallah, the mayor of Dielju, and Isika. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate in such a significant moment. It is in the streets of cities where we learn, where our creativity can flourish, and where we can fulfill our lives. If we do not prevent wars within our cities, all of our creativity with our inventions and our aspirations can also become scenarios of heartbreak, of shattered dreams, and of conflict. Cities do not declare war, but are the ones that feel the devastation of war. We need, as local and regional governments, to ensure that hardship does not become violence. We need to develop spaces of resilience that protect our communities and all of our neighbors. Our concept of peace needs to go beyond safety. It needs to be about inclusion, integration, and tolerance. Planting trees is an answer to the voices that consider war as an acceptable alternative. After all, trees are a symbol for developing livable spaces. Thank you very much.
Excellencies, in a short while after the speeches end, the Air Force of the South African National Defence Force will deliver outside here with one of their military helicopters a tree that will be planted. We will ask that the mayors of Strasbourg, the mayor of Gramoyes, the mayor of Ramallah, of Ibiza, Dijon, and Tunis be present because they will join us for the tree planting also. I want to at this stage ask the 4 young youth leaders to join us on the side here. They represent the 4 continents that are part of our intergenerational dialogues. They are from India, from Italy, from Brazil, and from Ghana. So if they could join us on the side here. And it is now my pleasure to call the Under-Secretary General of the United Nations in charge of UN 75, and as you know, we are going to plant 75 million trees to commemorate UN 75, and we will have 75 intergenerational dialogues across the world, and these are the first global peace ambassadors of global peace in their different continents, and they will spearhead those dialogues across the world to have 75. Under-Secretary General, it's my pleasure to call you.
Thank you very much, Excellency, Madam Minister, Madam Gracia Michelle, dear mayors and distinguished fellow panelists. It's a great honor to be here, and I think this is a wonderful campaign. Planting trees and highlighting this as the alternative to conflict is a very dignified and appropriate way to mark the 75th anniversary of an organization that is struggling today, not least because of its mandate to uphold peace and security to further social justice and human rights, and to promote sustainable development. The planting of trees at this moment could not be more critical. Trees are a weapon against climate change. Trees capture carbon and convert it into something that is healthy for the planet. But trees also are a very important reminder. Trees are the oldest living beings on this planet. Most of the trees we see around us came into the world before we existed, and many of them will live on after us. So they remind us of the future. And in so many of our politics, in so much of our commercial activity, we forget our obligations to the future. We forget that we are not owners of this planet, but caretakers. And the planting of trees connects us to the next generation, connects us to the generation after that. It represents our commitment to leave behind as much as we inherited. So I hope, as part of our marking of the 75th anniversary, an anniversary where the world needs to recommit to international cooperation, recommit to working together to uphold peace and security, we will try and amplify this campaign and do our utmost to start with 75 million trees, but hopefully reach 750 million. Thank you very much.
Excellencies, it's now my pleasure to call upon the representative of the Premier of our province, and the Premier is not missing in action. The Premier is not here precisely because of climate change and because of the devastation in our province. The Premier had to be out to go and manage the disasters that occurred in the province over the last few days, but he is well represented by the MEC, appropriately, since we are planting trees, by MEC of Agriculture and Rural Development, Honorable Bongi Sithole Moloi.
Thank you, Program Director. Madam Rasha Michelle, Global Peace Journalism. Mrs. Nosiviwe Mapisa Magula, Minister of Defense and Military Veterans. The UN Under Secretary General Councillor. The representative of the Mayor of eThekwini Metro. Deputy Minister Dr. Vasu Gandhi, Founder, Global Peace, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of our provincial government, I take this opportunity to extend our sincere appreciation to Mama Gracia Machel and Global Peace for initiating this global campaign in our province and facilitating our participation in this project of extreme significance. During the 1980s and the early 1990s, this province witnessed the most perilous political conflict which brought our nation into its knees. Since our historic election of 27 April 1994, our government has made enormous strides in rebuilding a democratic society and reclaiming our rightful place amongst the nations of the world. In the past 25 years, our province has made and become the beacon of peace and one in which focus on commitment to create a better life for its people. Our collective efforts to rebuild our democratic society free of poverty, inequality and unemployment is intrinsically linked to ensuring that we mitigate the impact of climate change on our democracy project. Last week, our President, Cyril Ramaphosa, launched the country's 25-year review report, where our recognized that our nation, as we made our progress, is mitigating the impact of climate change. However, as a government, we are also recognize that there are many challenges in this regard. Consequently, government has committed to encourage, invest, promote and utilize climate smart and green technology, including early warning system in all government, private and civil society sectors, new developments. The launch of the Plant Tree, Not Homes global campaign today therefore comes at an appropriate time as we accelerate our collective effort to secure the future generations. Our mission to create a better life for all the people of the world hinges on our collective commitment and action to save our planet. Future generations will not doubt judge us harshly if we fail. The plant of the tree of peace today is more than a symbolic action. It must be characteristics for the sustained effort to mitigate the disastrous consequences of climate change. I take this opportunity to commit our government in playing its part to ensure that the global peace target of planting 75 million trees across the world is achieved. It is my hope that when our President presents his 50-year review of the progress we have made as democracy, he will indeed be able to proclaim that we have made significant progress in securing the future for our future generation. I wish to thank you all for listening and listening.
Thank you very much, Honorable MEC. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the organization that is spearheading the campaign, Plant Trees Not Bombs, is the African Center for the Constructive Resolution of Disputes, known as ACCORD, which is the largest conflict management organization in Africa and has been working across the continent for the last 25 years. And last year, we launched Global Peace. We are very privileged to be led in that for the last 25 years. We have been led by a peace activist, a children's rights activist, a women's rights activist, and really an activist for change in the world. And it is now my pleasure to call the chair of our board, Mrs. Graça Machel.
Your Excellency, the Minister of Defense, it gives me really a huge pleasure to test the fact that this campaign is being launched in South Africa. It is led by none than other our Minister of Defense, of whom I have a huge respect, and I know that the example which is being set here in South Africa is going to fire up other many ministers of defense, and the history will have to test that. Yes, it started in South Africa, it started in Durban, and it became a global movement. Thank you for joining this and taking up the torch. Allow me first to express our profound sympathies and condolences to the political leadership as well as the people of KwaZulu-Natal for the devastating effects and the loss of life caused in the last few days by heavy rains, storms and the tornadoes. And we know that the threat is still there. It is possible that in the next days we still are going to face a huge impact of climate change. And this reminds us actually that at this coast of us, just the beginning of this year, we had also a huge impact of climate change in Beira and North Mozambique. So we as residents of this part of the world, we are paying already a very high price of impact of climate change. But we are saying at the same time that we are not going to sit and lament our geographic position, we are going to be, the light which says, we are going to do something against this, and we are going to put back part of what is important to sustain our world and to combat the climate change. And we inspire ourselves in some of our African leaders. And I'm not reading my speech to be very quick. Many of you might have heard of Thomas Sankara as a leader, revolutionary leader, very young man in West Africa. But very few of you will know of the huge campaign he launched exactly in 1986, because Burkina Faso is a desert part of it, it's a desert, and he made sure that he would mobilize every people in his country to plant trees. That's part of our inspiration. But many of you also heard of Wangari Maathai, who actually is a pioneer of raising the alarm about the impact of climate change and making sure that the responsibility is not only left to governments, but it is put in the hands of every citizen. She started a movement of the Green Belt, where it was mostly women who started planting millions and millions of trees. So this inspiration, yes, it came from Hiroshima, but it is based in the experience of Africans themselves to confront the impact of climate change. I believe that many of you have heard some statistic which I'm going to say very quickly. According to the World Bank, the fact that between 1990 and 2015, the world lost about 500.2 square miles of forest. It's an area which is larger than South Africa. Studies has also told us that about 15 billion trees are cut down each year. However, this is reversible. It all needs all of us to do something and to take action. In a meeting of the UN Forum of Forests, it was noted that forest-based climate change mitigation and adaptation actions, if fully implemented, could reduce greenhouse gas emissions by around 15 gigatons of CO2 a year by 2050. So as symbolic as this campaign looks like, it is extremely important to put in the hands of, in this case, of defense forces, but also of young generations, of everyone in our country, to say, we can reduce the impact of global warming and even to bring below the 2 degrees C, which is something which is in the hands of people to do. The action we are launching today as a code under our global peace is to embark on a campaign to plant 75 million trees in different parts of the world by 2020. I know my board will scold me by this, but 25 million trees is simply a symbol to join the initiative of UN, as they call it, 75 UN. But I'm sure we can do much more than 75 million. If the defense forces across the globe can plant 75 million, if local government leaders can also pledge their own target, which is not of the defense forces, their own target, and mobilizing schools, mobilizing rural areas, women, farmers, to say, let's plant trees. It's the tool which is now power in our hands, I'm sure that we can have a movement which, in one hand, the defense forces are telling us that they are movements of peace, to protect climate change, and they have the target of 75 million. But we as people of the world, led by local governments where we live, we can even go beyond the 75 million. That's the challenge as global peace, engaging all stakeholders which we would like to live with you. And we hope that by next year, every mayor and local government leader who is here will also report. While the Ministers of Defense will report to the UN, local government leaders will report to themselves, to the people, to the organization you represent here, also to say, we planted millions and millions of trees. We as global peace will mobilize other stakeholders we are working with, including youth movements, particularly students' unions, to take up the challenge as well, because it is their present and it's their future which is at stake. And together with our global champions here, we will work very, very hard to take this campaign all over the world. It is really a great pleasure for us, and we thank everyone who has been able to join us today, and particularly our beautiful and dynamic Minister of Defense. And I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, under apartheid, we had a very repressive military with an offensive capability. Under President Mandela in 1994, the mandate of the military was changed to become a peacekeeping force in the continent and in the world, and to ensure that it was deployed for humanitarian purposes. So when you see soldiers outside with guns and you see the launch of a peace initiative, there is no contradiction, because this is a military that is dedicated and mandated to protect. And when I, 2 weeks ago, called our Honorable Minister, she was in New York, launching a wonderful initiative where she had taken 10 women peacekeepers to the United Nations as part of Women, Peace and Security. And I said, Minister, this is what we would like to do. Without hesitation, she said, we shall do it. As South Africa, we will set the example. The South African National Defense Force will be deployed to plant the first tree and the first million trees, and I will personally challenge my counterpart defense ministers across the world to plant 1 million trees each, so that we get 75 million trees planted. So we have a minister with vision, and it's my pleasure to call a minister whose birthday it was yesterday, by the way.
Program Director, Mama Graça Machel, Global Peace Chairperson, Mr. Fabrizio Hochschild-Drummond, and UN Under-Secretary General, our Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, represented by the NPC Sitole, Mr. Nkodisi Kaunda, Executive Mayor of eThekwini Municipality, represented by the Speaker, Mr. Pax Tabu, President of the United Cities Local Government, and of course, a Deputy Minister of Cooperative Governance and Local Government, Dr. Vasu Gordon, Founder, Global Peace and Executive Director of Accord. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed my great pleasure and honor to stand alongside Mama Graça Machel, the Chair of Global Peace and a global peace activist, to launch the Plant Trees Not Bomb campaign.
I'm quite certain that the question on top of most of your minds is why the launch of a peace campaign by a Minister of Defense and military veterans. This was the same question I had when the founder of Global Peace, Vasu, approached me to partner with Global Peace and to launch this campaign. Excellencies, for centuries, whilst the role of the military has been to protect a nation and her citizens from external threats, it is also true that the role of our military establishment that has in many of the conflicts afflicting the world inflicted untold pain and misery on the lives of millions of our people. In South Africa, the survival of the apartheid regime was very much dependent on the support of the military establishment. In fact, during those dark days, the military was very much the brains trust of the apartheid state. However, as Vasu indicated earlier on, since the advent of democracy in 1994, our democratic government has spent an enormous amount of time in transforming our military establishment from one which was a warmonger to one which is now a peacekeeper with respect for the country's constitution and international law. On the 18th of March 1995, in the very same city, on receiving Accord's Africa Peace Award, one of the founding fathers of our democracy, Tata Madiba, Nelson Mandela, had this to say, and I quote, "Never again shall South Africa be the fountainhead of conflict in the region and further afield. Never again shall our country be the source of armaments used to suppress communities and to wage aggressive wars against our neighbors. Never again shall we spend our people's resources to develop weapons of mass destruction." Close quote. Excellencies, during that turbulent period, Tata Madiba and his fledgling democratic government recognized that the repositioning of the military establishment and other security agencies held the key to ensuring peace and stability in our democracy. I'm therefore happy to report that our military establishment has walked the talk, from being a fountainhead of conflict to one which is making a significant contribution towards securing peace and stability in our continent. In fact, we rank amongst the top 2 contributing countries of the United Nations mission, making peace and, when necessary, enforcing it. Today, the world is confronted with a new threat, namely climate change. You know, none of us ever thought that we would see a tornado in this region, in this continent. But 2-3 days ago, we saw it here in this very province. And I said, it's a reality. Climate change is a reality. And therefore, it is quite significant that this campaign is being launched in this city, in this region, in this continent. Climate change threatens our way of life, but more importantly, tomorrow it threatens the very existence of future generations. Whilst talk of climate change may sound like a far distant phenomenon, we see and experience it daily. It is against this background that we've committed to use our weapons of war to go to war on this new threat of climate change. We need to use all our creative talents and all our resources to fight climate change. The fight against climate change requires the discipline, skills, and technology that the military is renowned for. Ours is defense and development, Hence, we are also involved in major developments in support of our people, such as the major undertaking we have in the Vaal River system, where we've undertaken major repairs of infrastructure and pollution prevention. Our engineers have been hard at work since October 2018. We are finding ways of carving and identifying our niche during peace times here in our country. We have identified the work of development in our communities and as one of the key priorities of government. Issues of food security are issues which are now uppermost in our priority. I should also use the opportunity to remind us that even early on in our democracy, we realized the importance of the environment. And as such, in our 1996 white paper on defense, there is a section there which deals with matters of environment. But we've now gone beyond that and established an environmental unit within the South African National Defence Force, whose members are here in our midst. It is for these reasons that I agreed, without hesitation, to commit our military to this campaign in the fight against climate change. I believe that we are the only ones who have the necessary capacity to plant 1 million trees within the next financial year. I really believe that we do have the capacity. So today, Excellencies, as we lower the tree from one of our military helicopters, we are illustrating to our citizenry and the world the versatility of the military. It can also give life. Who can forget the assistance of the South African National Defence Force to Mozambique? And I don't want to talk about yesterday, I want to refer to the event or the incident in the year 2000. The delivery of a beautiful baby girl, Rosita, on a tree with the help of the South African Air Force helicopter. So as we gather here, we are reopening a chapter in the role of the military, a chapter that changes the narrative from planting bombs to planting trees, from inflicting pain and death to giving life. I will confer with the Military Command Council and the National Defence Force, chief led by General Shoke, and I'll ask them to plant 1 million trees and to enjoin other defence forces to do the same. We started yesterday, Vasu, you'll be happy to hear this. I was with my colleagues yesterday in Tanzania to discuss a different matter related to the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I whispered to one of my counterparts that this is what we are going to be launching. What was interesting was, the response was, okay, my sister, maybe this is worth considering, but please urge them not to advocate for a reduction of our budget for the military. So that was the anxiety expressed by one of the defense. And I said, no. We also need this budget. We will not advocate for a reduction. If anything, they must help us to get more resources in order for us to plant more trees. So I'm just telling you that I already have an idea of what is likely to come out. Maybe to counter this, but we are determined to do it. I also want to use this opportunity to extend a hand of partnership to my counterparts, of course. I will call on them to join the South African National Defence Force, Global Peace and its partners to plant the 75 million trees by September 2020. 75 million sounds a big number, but with the capacity which the defence forces across the continent, across the globe, we do have the necessary capacity to do this, if there is political will. Of course, this will be to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations. Mr. Drummond, Under Secretary General, please inform His Excellency, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, that by our conduct today, we signal our full support for the multilateral global order and our resolve to strengthen it. It also comes at a time when we are members of the United Nations Security Council, even though on a non-permanent basis, which we chaired during October 2019. We will also be using this, amongst others, as part of our flagship programs, because we will now, from February, be chairing the African Union. So I can rely on the President to call on other presidents to instruct their ministers to do exactly what we are doing here today. Mama Grasa, let me congratulate you and the leadership of Global Peace for this innovative campaign. Let me also thank the leadership of the city of eThekwini and the KZN province for embracing it. I also thank the leadership of the United Cities and local government for integrating this campaign launch in its program. Cities and local government are the lifeblood of our nations. And I call on all our mayors across the world to embrace the campaign, to plant trees and breathe life into our social spaces. We're fortunate we have 9 provinces in South Africa. We have 44 districts. We have 8 metros. And in each one of those, in its proximity, we do have 1 and even more bases of the South African National Defence Force. So I can assure you that we are going to walk the talk. We're not just talking, we're not just launching, we're not having these flashy cameras. Behind the scenes, those men and women who are lined up there, who come from this environment unit, will be doing this work. I now invite you, Mama Grasa, and our 4 young leaders, one of whom I share a birthday I discovered yesterday, and with all our partners present here, to receive from the South African Air Force and to plant the first of the 75 million trees. So, let's plant trees and not bombs. Thank you.
So can we maybe just wait for 2 minutes? I want to take this opportunity at this point to recognize another visionary Premier, Premier David Makhura. We'd like to recognize you, and we'd like to say that we are coming to your province next. So the next tree will be planted in your province, and we know with your vision you will receive it. We start with the minister.
Hopefully, this is the first we have made an undertaking to the world that we will be able to run a campaign which will see the planting of 75 million hope that our president, as he takes over the chairship of the African Union in February, that amongst others, as his flagship program, he will push all leaders beg or give instructions to the ministers of defense, which will also be doing, to plan more peace, only to serve generations to come. And I'm using a new spade.
Yeah, but she has done it.
No, I've done it for you, Ma.
As the defense forces will be mobilizing across the continent, across the globe, we will mobilize young people, different stakeholders, exactly to do our part. And yes, so that it will be in the minds of everybody that peace is the future of humankind, not war.
Yep, we need the youth leaders and then we need all the mayors.
Yes.
This is Italy. Now we have Ghana. And Brazil, where they need to plant the lotus.
Yes. Amazon.
And India, everybody will get 1.2 billion free. Oh yeah. MEC. USG.
Thank you for planting the first tree in this beautiful city. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mama President. Pastor Michelle for launching the campaign in our city.
I'd like to thank South Africa, thank the court for setting this example for the whole world. And we hope this will flourish not only in Africa, but globally. Do our best for promoting everywhere. Thank you.
President Park Chow. Our favorite city in Africa.
We take the campaign to Mozambique.
To Mozambique.
Thank you for starting with Durban at the Nkosi Albert Luthuli Center. This center was opened by President Mandela, and by planting this tree, we are saying peace in our lifetime.
And the SG of UCSG, Emilia says,
I am a farmer's daughter, so I know how to do this. There you go. Plant beautiful trees.
thank you. And I will do one for peace in the world.